Okay guys, well, I had come out here in the shop today and I thought about something that Sam had asked me about. He had got an email from someone that had converted a Precision Matthews and they were having trouble with their Z-axis. I don't know how to explain it. I guess it's binding in the gibs of the Z-axis. It kind of gives you a vibration when you're jogging up and down. I have had some of that in my machine. The best thing I could come up with is the dovetails flexing in the column because of the head weight. I guess if it ever flexes just one time and it introduces that vibration in the whole mechanic system there, it kind of keeps it. So when I first got that, I picked it up after I installed the servos. I never had the issue until I started moving at 100 inches a minute. When I had the steppers and I was moving 60 inches a minute, I never had an issue with the vibration or binding or whatever you want to call it. I do know that if there's any loose play or if anything's not just right or tight in that system, there's going to be that's going to show up. Because for one thing, if there's any binding or if you have your gibs too tight and say the head starts dropping and there's any loose play in that assembly, then it's going to be like the ball screw, the nut is going to move before the saddle moves, and then once it comes in contact or puts pressure downward, then it's going to skip a little bit, if that makes sense. That's the slack in the assembly. So if there's any slack in your assembly, that could be causing your binding or your vibration that you're getting as it's going down. I have worked on my machine for days, adjusting the gibs and playing with this and playing with that, trying to get it as good as I could get it. Now, I've got most of it out. As you can see there, that was 200 inches a minute up and down. That's 100 inches a minute. So mostly it's gone, but now sometimes I get it, and I can't explain it. I don't know exactly where it's coming from, but it's my best guess that there's some flex in that column around those dovetails due to the weight that is being suspended out off from them. So as it's kind of trying to pull away from the column, it's squeezing the gibs together with that opening for the ball nut mount slide up and down that column. It's just part of this type of machine's design that is a weakness. I used to use whey oil up on the Z-axis, and I still do from time to time. I don't always use it because it seems like there's a little bit of stickage involved with that oil. It's slippery. It does a fantastic job, but there's some amount of, I don't know, resistance from it because of it's so thick. It's not as thick as some oils. It's not as thick as extreme pressure oil. But it's thicker than, I use WD-40 most of the time. For one reason, for the biggest part, the whey oil ends up in the coolant. So if it's going to end up in the coolant, it's going to plug up my filter, and it's just going to end up not doing anything, basically. I mean, there's going to be a real light sheen that's left that gravity just can't pull off. But as far as having oil up there and providing you any lubrication, it's not going to be very effective at it. WD-40 is not the best thing in the world to use for it, but since I've started using WD-40 on the ways, I don't have as much of it get in my coolant. WD-40 will evaporate better than whey oil. Whey oil will hang around. You know, it's not going to evaporate. It's going to hang around. I think it dries out a little bit to a point where it becomes almost syrupy, and I noticed when I was using it quite a bit on my X and Y axis ways, especially on my X axis, I was getting a real sticky, gummy, almost black looking substance hanging out on the end of the ways, and just nasty. I mean, it was nasty. Since I started using this Coolant, it leaves a fantastic coating on everything, even the ways. It's just this real slippery lubrication that it leaves behind. The water will evaporate out, and this slippery stuff is left behind. It's all over the machine when you come back to it. It's I don't know if I can even get a close enough shot to even come close to showing you what I'm talking about. There's quite a bit of it right here on the edge of this vise. I don't know how I would show it to you. I don't know if you can see that on my finger or not, but there's quite a bit of that real slippery, thick lubrication there left behind. And let's see if there's some down here on the servo cover. Let me see if I can get you get you off of this base and bring you over here and see if we can see this. You can see it build up around that chip right there. It's pretty built up there. You can see that. And I pulled it out. You see, see how it's mounded up there? That's this stuff is like really slippery. It's not gummy, it's not sticky, it's just slippery. So this stuff gets all on your ways. It gets all over it. Anything that's on prior to the water evaporating. So since I've been using this Coolant, I haven't used, so since I've started using this Coolant, I haven't used much of the whey oil on the X and the Y axis because it's pretty much lubricated. I might put a little bit on it every now and then, but nowhere near as like every day like I was before. Before I'd start machining, I would oil up the ways, and I practically I would have to clean them every day before I could even get started because they were so gummed up from the whey oil. I'd have to clean them, and then once I cleaned them, then well, you need to lubricate them because there's nothing there. So that was pretty much a daily task whenever I started, whenever I cranked up the machine and was going to use it. Then that was the first thing I had to do, was get the ways clean so the thing would move around freely. And now I don't have to worry about that. When I come in, it's not gummed up, it's not nasty looking, it's clean, it's got some form of lubrication on it. It seems to, I don't see any indications of any wear. Sometimes if there's an excessive amount of water, if I have it too thin, if I don't have enough, if the ratio is not correct, then I might have some rust show up from where there was a good amount of water left behind, and the water pushed the coolant away from, or the lubrication away from the surface, and then it might cause a little spot to kind of generate a little bit of rust. But as long as you keep your index correct, then the water doesn't hang around long enough to cause you problems. So I'm glad I switched to this coolant in that aspect, and it does not leave stains on my parts, and I don't have any problems with stains on my parts. But I have noticed that, and I don't know if it's coming from, if the index gets out of whack, or if something gets out of whack in the mixture of it or whatever, or if there's just some electrical issue or something I don't know about on my machine. But I do get it's a little bit of a light discoloration. I don't know where it's coming from or why, but if you see right along this edge right here, you can see there's and even over here by this edge here, you see this light straw color or real light bronze color on here. I get that, but other than that, the rest of the machine seems to be really good. No issues anywhere else. So you can see that little dark place right there, that's actually the lubricant. If you wipe that off, see, it's back silver again, but it leaves that real thick. It's not sticky, it's not gummy, it's just slippery, and it leaves that behind all over everywhere. But yeah, I can see someone having the issue that this gentleman is explaining. I have had that. Here's a real good amount of that. This has a little bit of water in it, but it's mostly that lubrication. You can see it's pretty. It's not sticky or gummy or too thick or anything. It's just like it's just lubrication. It's almost like a real thin oil. So it really works well, lubricating everything and protecting everything. It leaves a really good coating, like I say, you know, and I don't machine all the time, so there's quite a few hours during the week that I don't run the machine at all, and it just sits. So my shop is not air conditioned all the time, so I'm sure without climate control there is some amount of moisture, humidity, condensation, whatever, however you want to explain it or call it. I'm sure it exists in this atmosphere after I leave and I stay gone and everything kind of settles down and the temperature is up and down and not really controlled or anything. I'm sure there's some moisture that comes from that through the machine, but it does not affect the surfaces because it has this protection on it. So I noticed that when I started using the Predator blood, it left behind this same residue, and it had more of a cleaning effect on the machine than what this does, but that stuff weren't quite as friendly as this stuff is, and I feel a little bit better about using this Coolant because it's a little more friendly to you. It may not have quite as many benefits or cleaning benefits, not lubrication benefits or anything like that, but cleaning benefits than the Predator blood or whatever I think it was called Safe Cut, Cost Cut or Safe Cut or something. Cost Cut, I believe. Yeah, this was it right here. Cost Cut 520 Biostable Synthetic Coolant. It's it has everything in it that Coolant has. It doesn't let any tramp oil, it won't mix, it rejects it just like Coolant does, so that gives you a chance to skim it, and it's about the same cut ratio, 5 to 10%. So I mean, it doesn't contain formaldehyde, it does not contain boron, it does, you know, it says it's, you know, biodegradable or biostable, but it doesn't. If you look at the MSDS sheet on it, it's just not as friendly to you as Coolant. So that's one other reason why I switched to Coolant, because it was a little more friendly to the user. So with all that being said, just thought I would kind of post a little something on it for the gentleman that is having this issue with his Z-axis. I don't know that he watches any of my videos or not, but maybe it'll get out to him, or he might find it in a search or something looking for an answer for his problem. But I can tell you this machine has quite a bit of weight on the head now, and like I say, I don't have any of that consistently. It seems to be smooth. It seems to be smooth most of the time now. I do know sometimes, and I think it's more of a lubrication issue for me now than it is a mechanical slop issue or looseness issue or binding issue. It's more of a lubrication issue. As long as I keep the ways wet, it stays smooth. I've had this, it sounds like just a vibration, like if I'm probing, sometimes it'll do that little vibrating thing, and I'll spray some WD-40 on it, and then when the machine goes back up, it'll wipe over the WD-40 and then start carrying that along with it, and I don't have any issues with it. So it could be a dryness of the ways, it could be a number of things, but I'm sure that contributes to it as well. I did not put a oiler on my machine. When I did my conversion, I didn't have access. I didn't have any way to do that. So I just left that part out. I felt like I could keep oil on the ways good enough, and I just didn't do it. I have an oiler, but I think I'm going to use it on my ball screws. I don't think I'm going to use it for oiling the ways or anything. Now if I put in some linear ways, I may run a line from it to the linear trucks to keep those lubricated, but anything further than that, I don't think I'm going to use it, just for the fact that that oil does not stay where you put it. It ends up in your coolant, and if you don't have a skimming system, it ends up in your filter, and you end up changing your filter because it catches that oil in the filter and it won't let the coolant through. So you end up having to change your filter quite frequently if you end up getting a lot of tramp oil in your system. So I try to avoid getting much tramp oil in the system. Even on my fly cutting operations, I've began using the Coolant. There's not much of a difference in finish, but you can't see what's going on. So that was one of my main reasons for using WD-40 for fly cutting, is because you could see what was happening. And it's not really all that important for me to see what's happening anymore, as long as the end result is what I want it to be. So yes, it's kind of neat to see the chips fly, but for me it's all about getting the job done and getting the results that I want. If I can see it happening, you know, that's alright too, but if I can't see it happening, I don't care. It's not going to break my heart as long as I get what I want. So I have used fog coolant one time before when I first got the machine, and it's quite messy, and I just don't like it. makes a pretty big mess. We'll leave it at that. Flood coolant makes a mess, but fog coolant makes a really big mess. So anyway, I just thought I would kind of shoot this out there so that someone would have a little bit of a basis on what's going on. Like I say, I don't have an issue as long as I keep those ways lubricated. I think my issue comes if I don't lubricate it like I should. If I spray it every once in a while, it's fine. If I just get lazy and I don't spray it, it'll happen, and then I'll have to, and I'll know, yeah, you should have sprayed. So you spray it and then it goes away, and then I'll have any problem with it the rest of the time I'm working. So I think partially it's a lubrication issue, and then secondly, there's just a little bit of flex in that design of the column. So it's two things contributing to it, and then if there's any looseness in your assembly, then there's three things. So check your assembly, make sure it's good and tight, good and no play, no backlash, no, you know, just make sure everything is good, solid, and then check your ways and make sure they're not too tight. If your ways are too tight, then you could have stickage issues that could be causing your vibration as well. If your saddle is sticking and then your ball screw pushes it down and then it skips whatever backlash you have in your ball screw, you're going to get a little bit of vibration out of that. It's going to be like push, stop, you know, push, stop, kind of bump, 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 bump as it's going down. So that could be part of the issue if you don't get the ways just right. I mean, it's like I said, I worked on it for days, working on those gibs, tighten, loosen, tighten, loosen, loosen, tighten, until I finally got it where, I don't know if it was where I got it just right or I just got frustrated enough to say, that's it, I'm tired of messing with it. But it seems to be okay now. I don't know if it's because it's wore itself in, or if it's I got it just right or what, but it seems to be okay for now. And like I say, as long as I keep it wet, it doesn't do that as much. So just keep that in mind, guys. I don't know if I offered any help or anything, but maybe it'll give this person some things to take a look at and some things to take in consideration, and maybe something out of it will help him. Alright guys, appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Till next time, take it easy.